Alrighty, Diana Hughes is our guest today, vocalist, and she has a song from La Cage aux Folles.
Meant to be sung by a male, but I will do my best to honor this. If you don't know La Cage aux Folles, it is a story of, well, it's a very convoluted story about a gay couple, one of whom is a drag queen. And it is the drag queen who sings this. I am what I am. I am my own special creation. So come take a look, give me the hook or the ovation. It's my world that I want to have a little pride in. My world, and it's not a place I want to hide in. Life's not worth a day till you can say, hey world, I am what I am. I am what I am. I don't need praise. I don't need pity. I bang my own drum. Some think it's noise. I think it's pretty. And so what if I love each bubble and each bangle? Why not try to see things from a different angle? Your life is a sham till you can shout out, world, I am what I am. I am what I am, and what I am needs no excuses. I deal my deck, sometimes the ace, sometimes the deuces. There's one life, and there's no return and no deposit. One life, so it's time to open up your closet. Life is just a sham till you can say, hey world, I
Thank you, Diana.
Wow. Thank you, Diane. And Todd and Kent, let's give it up for our music team again. Nailed it. Wow. Well, good morning. And I didn't say good morning to all of our friends and family on Facebook. We have Joe and Stella and Carol and Mary and Eric watching us from the Dominican Republic. Good morning, Eric. And Rita and Leo and Rita again. How are you on there twice? And Leslie and Lila. So good to have you with us. And I know there are more of you out there. And we want you to know that we feel your presence and we hope you feel our love too. So we are glad you are all here today. Well, today we are celebrating Pride. And as a pastor, I often have to deal with people calling me with questions. Well, how can you be open? How does that fit with the Gospels? We're going to talk about how it does fit with the Gospels. and why we believe the way we do in unity. I'm going to start by telling you a story that a friend of mine told me a while back. He was a pastor of a more traditional church in Joplin, Missouri, which is a much more traditional part of the country. And he was having a conversation with two parents whose son had just come out. And they were having a hard time dealing with this. And the son joined the last half hour of the call. And the parents spent their time asking their child, please come back to God. Please come back to Jesus. They said it in very different ways over and over again. And the following was my friend's response. He said to the parents and the son, Jesus called people to enter the kingdom of heaven. But he also taught that that kingdom of heaven is inside of each and every living being, which is why that famous story we know of from the Bible called the parable of the prodigal son described an experience of not one, but two different youth on their soul's journey to discover who they were. So often that story is interpreted as a story of a father's forgiveness for his son, but we don't look at another layer of meaning to that story. And I believe this is really the truth of what that story was about. It covers all different aspects of life. But it was a story of two young people, the older brother and the younger brother, who were on a journey to discover who they truly were. If you're not familiar with the story, I'll give you a brief synopsis. There was a father who had two sons. He was wealthy. He owned lots of land and flocks and crops and all of that good stuff. His eldest son, who of course would inherit it all, was a dutiful son, obeyed all of the rules, fit perfectly into the culture of their community, made no waves. The younger son was the black sheep of the family. He was different, and he didn't feel like he fit in. And so finally, one day, as he approached adulthood, he said, I am going to go away. I don't know if he consciously knew that he was setting out on a journey to find himself or not. But he set out on a journey to a far country, and a far country metaphysically means exploring, finding out who we are as individuals, who we came here to be. And it says that he went through a lot of adventures and misadventures and struggles, and probably was quite a long time, and he found himself in a place he didn't want to be, where he was, in the story it says he was eating slop with the pigs. Now, if you know anything about Judaism, that would not be a good thing. Wouldn't be a good thing even if you weren't Jewish. But at some point, he did something. There's a line in there that says the young man came to himself. A line that is often, I think, overlooked. Because what that tells me is he realized the truth of who he was, of what he came here to be. And he said, I am no longer going to deny who I am. I am going to be the light that I came here to be. And so he decided to return to his family. Now, these parents back in the modern times were telling their son, come to God, come to Jesus. And my friend said, your son cannot come to God. Why? Not because he was gay, but because you can't come to God because God has never left you. He was not separate from God. He didn't have to come to God. He was already with God. And that's what my friend was trying to get through to his parents, was that God is with us and God shows up as us in a myriad of ways. To say that there are only two genders is to limit the Creator itself. Do you know most cultures in ancient times recognized multiple genders, and many still do? It's only since the days of puritanical religion that we limited it to 2. Even in Jesus' day, it was accepted that there were many different ways for humans to show up. God had never left the young man in the story. He came to himself, he realized the truth of who he was, and he went back to his father, and what did his father do? He greeted him with open arms, welcomed him home, because love knows no boundaries. Now, the eldest son had an issue with that. He said, but wait a minute, I'm the good son. I follow all the rules. I show up exactly the way society expects me to. I make no waves, and here you are, look at him. You're honoring him and feeding him the fatted calf and all of that good stuff. What about me? And the father said, you have always been with me. You know who you are. Accept who you are. Be who you came here to be, as your brother did. You are both my beloved children. What it's all about is coming into conscious union with who we truly are. And as 7 billion human beings, we can show up in 7 billion different ways. God is not limited in love or any other aspect. We're all here for one purpose. Each and every one of us, straight, gay, every race, every religion, we're all here for one reason. And that is to work out our own salvation. Now, salvation doesn't mean we're washed in the blood and saved by a guy who lived 2,000 years ago. It means we are coming to union with ourselves. The very word salvation means a good union, a pure union, union with the truth of who we are. So the prodigal's salvation was a layered process of awakening to his true identity. For the older brother, it was an awakening to his true identity. For the father, it was understanding that there were many different kinds of identities, and they were all of God. It's a great and powerful lesson for our time today. This was the gospel that Jesus taught. That's why he told this story. He said, yes, the journeys of these 2 sons were very different. Both of their journeys were yet the same. Both were treks that led to them to forget who they were and to come into remembrance of who they were. One lost himself for a time in a far country. The other one lost himself two doors down from his father's room in the same house. We are all on that journey. Sometimes we get lost. Sometimes growing up, because of where we live and the society we live in and the things we are told, we are lost. But our purpose is to find ourselves. Salvation is a remembering. It's a coming home to the truth. It's a coming to ourselves. It is a digging through the layers and layers of programming and teaching that have been piled on us through cultures, through generations, through teachings, until we uncover our own true heart and soul. It is to be born again into the truth of who we are, not to be invaded by an external source, but to uncover the spirit within. We're told in traditional Christianity that the Holy Spirit descends from heaven. But remember what Jesus said? Heaven is within all of us, each and every one of us. So where does that whole spirit, the whole Spirit of God, come from? Right in here. And our job is to move from here to here and find it. Salvation is to remember and to be remembered. I remember growing up, I'm a little older than some of you in this room. And when I was a child, LGBTQ rights were not even on the radar. And I remember, I'll share kind of a humorous story with you. Sitting in the back seat of the car, I was probably about 6 or 7 or 8 or so, and my parents were talking about my cousin. Now, this was the 60s. My cousin was a hippie. He had long hair. And I remember my mom saying, well, he must be gay. And I could tell she didn't approve. And I was a kid. I only had one definition for the word gay. And I thought, what's wrong with being happy? It took me years to understand, oh, that's not a good thing? It's not good to be gay? Okay. But then, thank God, I found unity. And it opened my eyes and my heart to something I always had known, but had buried. And that's what happens in our world. We are born knowing the truth, that each and every one of us is a child of God. We know that. Put 2 babies together, there's no labels on them. It's unconditional love. We have to be taught differences. We have to be taught, oh, you can accept this person, but not this person. But our salvation brings us back to the point where we say, you are my brother, you are my sister, regardless of any man-made divisions. That's why Jesus said, love one another as I have loved you. He loved everybody. There is no record of him saying, I can't stand that so-and-so, or he's not a good Jew. Actually, Jesus himself was not a good Jew by the definition of his day. Love one another as I have loved you. All too often, the thief that steals that understanding we are born with is our society, our friends, and all too often even our churches. But in unity, we believe different. I'd like to say we always have. I know for a fact that we had to grow too. We grew faster, I think, than many other denominations. But we had to grow too. And unity today, as most of you in this room know, and hopefully most of you on Facebook know if you don't, everybody is a part of our unity family. I remember my wife telling me about a church before she found unity. And she was looking for a church in Joplin that fit her belief system. She would call them up, and she would say, do you accept everybody in your church? And they would say, oh, yes. Well, if I bring my gay friend, will they be accepted in your church? Well, yes, of course. Can they teach Sunday school? Well, no. That's not acceptance. That's not acceptance. And it took her until she found unity to find the one that said, yes, of course. So in unity, we believe every single one of us is created in the image and likeness of what? God, yes. And that image and likeness is infinitely diverse. So we have a diversity statement that was written by Unity Worldwide Ministries in 2016, I believe. And it goes like this. We recognize and honor the divine within as the one common denominator we share on our human journey. The living heart of unity understands and manifests its support of this divinity by recognizing that there is inherent good in every single person. Unity Worldwide Ministries, its members, that's us, and its affiliates welcome with love all people in every form of God's creation, regardless of how that creation presents itself. It is the intent that unity organizations are inclusive and non-discriminatory. We honor all components that contribute to the diversity of community. We affirm and support unity principles and programs that manifest diversity in our teachings, policies, buildings, and within our communities. We are resolute in walking the course of human rights and social justice for all. So let's break that down a little bit. We recognize and honor the divine within as the one common denominator that we share on our human journey. What is the divine? What is the divine? The divine is the central proposition that each and every living thing is a piece of God. And that divine energy is in every living being. It makes no difference what you call it. Call it God, call it Allah, call it spirit, call it energy, call it divine love. It doesn't matter. Those are human words. The energy, the divine, is in everything. It is, in fact, our true identity. It is who we are. It is all of creation. It is the universe. And the nature of that creation and the nature of every human being is goodness. That's why we say there is only one presence and one power in the universe. God the good. God the good. Unlimited in every way. How many of you ever saw the movie Robin Hood with, I think it was Kevin Costner, was it? There's a great line in there uttered by Morgan Freeman. Morgan Freeman plays a Muslim person who's been hanging out with the merry men and women. And he's sitting there, and there's also Friar Tuck, who, of course, doesn't like a Muslim, right? And they have this kind of tension between them all the time. Friar Tuck eventually comes around, but it takes time. But there's this one scene where Morgan Freeman is sitting in there, and this little girl, about 6, 7 years old, comes up to him, and she looks at him. And she says, "Did God paint you?" And Morgan Freeman kind of chuckles. And he says, "For certain." And she says, "Why?" And he says, "Because Allah loves wondrous variety. You see, that is why your hair is brown and your eyes are blue." God loves wondrous variety. Look out at the pictures from Hubble. Some of those. The variety and the wonder of the universe is not limited to out there. It's right here in the human family. It is everywhere present. We cannot define God, because when we try to define it, we put a limit on it, and God is limitless. That is why we have different religions, why we have different ways of loving, why we have different forms of governments and societies, because we too are unlimited in our diversity. I have so much to say today, and only so much time. The living heart of unity understands and manifests its support of this divinity by recognizing there is inherent good in all people. We don't say we are better than others. We don't say we are the only way. We say we are a way. We honor all components that contribute to diversity, each and every one of them. That is why we enthusiastically support diversity in all of its forms, why we enthusiastically support our LGBTQ family members here and around the world, and why we are resolute in walking the course of human rights and social justice. Webster defines the word unity as the state of forming a complete and pleasing whole. At this time in the evolution of humanity and the lives of the human beings that live upon this earth, the task of forming a complete and pleasing whole is imperative if we are going to survive. It is imperative for the positive evolution of the human race. We will evolve one way or another. Why not evolve to a higher level? We are a part, we believe, in making that happen. There are those in the world who seek to block this, not because they're evil, but because they're afraid. Change is hard. It's difficult. And for many people, it's very scary. That is why through education, we work to open hearts, minds, and eyes. It's a big job, but that's why we do it. That's why we had our booth at PrideFest this year, and it made me very, very happy to be able to say, not Unity Spiritual Center of Albuquerque supports it, but Unity in New Mexico supports it. We had representation from all 4 Unity churches in New Mexico. Yes. Yes. Did we have anybody stop by from some of the other cities? Yes? Fantastic. Yes, and we'll be sending our stuff up to Santa Fe for their Pride Fest. I think it's next week. So we'll be represented up there. We're building unity in New Mexico, which is something that hasn't happened, and I'm really happy that we're doing it. Oy. Boy, I got so much. My computer the battery's dead. That's why I'm using my phone. The other thing I wanted to discuss, and I'll go over it real quick, is the teachings that many pastors in more traditional communities use to show why it's not right to be a member of the LGBTQ community. They're wrong. I'm just going to say it. But they're wrong because they have been taught that way. So let's look at the few passages that get used all of the time. The first, as many of you may know, is in Leviticus. And it says, "A man shall not lie with another man as he would with a woman." You have to look at the Gospels, at the Bible, at the Hebrew Scriptures, especially the Christian Scriptures as well. You have to look them in the context of their time and the world they lived in. Think about Leviticus, where that passage is found. Roughly 4,000 to 6,000 years ago. Israel did not exist as a nation. Judaism did not exist yet as a religion. There were 12 different tribes, if the stories are accurate, that fled Egypt. They were united by a common language, but that was it. They worshiped various gods. They had different ideas of governance. And Moses had to pull them all together as one people if they were going to survive. Leviticus were the laws they chose to live by. Now, they were a warrior people. They made their living plundering and pillaging as they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years, and they were good at it. But if you're a warrior people, what do you always need more of? Warriors. Hence that law that they made. They needed male babies. That was the only reason. The one and only reason. And it was another time, 4,000 years or so ago. I'd like to think we're evolving past being a warrior culture. Sometimes I wonder. But I'd like to see us. And by the way, I'm just going to throw this out. When people say, "I want to be a prayer warrior," let's change that consciousness and be prayer angels and get rid of the warrior consciousness. It's time. Yes. The 2 other stories that pastors like to use in other churches about why you have to be straight is the stories of Sodom and Gomorrah. Horribly, horribly mistranslated stories. Sodom was destroyed because of social injustice and a lack of charity. If you go back and you read these stories in their original languages, the oldest versions we have, they weren't destroyed for any other reason. Gomorrah was destroyed because they bred outside of their own tribe. Now, if you know anything about genetics, that's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it's probably a good idea. That's why they were destroyed according to the stories. So we can't use those arguments. What about the New Testament? What did Jesus say about homosexuality? Nothing. Yes, absolutely nothing. However, there's a couple interesting experiences that are shared about his ministry and that. One of them is found in Matthew and Luke, where he heals the centurion's servant. Now, in the original Greek, the word for servant that was used in that story was pais, which refers to a male lover or a lover of the same sex. Jesus didn't say, well, I can't heal him. He said, of course I'll heal him. We're all human beings. And that was common in those days. So there's nothing in the Gospels that talks about how we show up in love that limits it, except for one passage 6,000 years ago that has no relevance in today's world. So in unity, we stand for equality. We stand for diversity. We have ministers, teachers, spiritual leaders who are straight, gay, from different religious paths. We are all one. So we welcome you, each and every one of you. As I say always at the beginning of our service, regardless of your race, religion, nationality, gender identity, or sexual orientation, and I usually throw in hair color or shoes or something just for fun, you are a beloved child of God. And myself, unity, and God leave no one out. Thank you for being part of this family.
Thanks, Gordon. As an I mess them up. As an alphabet ally, LGBTQ plus, there are more there now. As an ally, Todd and I talked about songs that were anthems. So this is a tune with, well, I'm losing words as I get older. So think, huh?
It's gravity.
He says it's gravity. This is a tune by Gloria Gaynor, supposedly talking about losing a lover. However, it can be about a mindset. It can be about an addiction. It can be about someone in your life that you just don't really need there anymore. It can be about anything. So I unitized it just a teensy bit. Very small. But sing along if you know it, and you do. At first I was afraid, I was petrified, kept thinking I could never live without you by my side. But then I spent so many nights thinking how you did me wrong, and I grew strong, and I learned how to get along, and now you're back from outer space. I just walked in to find you here with that sad look upon your face. I should have changed that stupid lock. I should have made you leave your key. If I'd known for just 1 second you'd be back to bother me. Go on now, go. Walk out the door. Just turn around now, 'cause you're not welcome anymore. Weren't you the one who tried to hurt me with your lies? You think I'd crumble? You think I'd lay down and die? Oh no, not I. I will survive. Oh, as long as I know how to love, I know I'll stay alive. I've got all my life to live. I've got all my life
why you didn't have to end it, but thank you very
Kids
much.
back
Thank
there
you.
already.